Strap in and be prepared.
Maybe I'll learn from your failures.
That is what you could do.
Yeah.
Interesting guests.
Kelly Graves, Mike Parker, Josh Pate, George Reiser, Ryan Lee, Yogi Roth, who said that Justin and I are smart.
Sharp opinions.
I think Dan Lanning sitting in his office going, you know what, fine, give us the toughest road to win the national championship. That's what it should be.
Oregon State in their baseball program is still operating from a position of strength, even if they're independent. But here they are in the College World Series.
And some smiles.
It's iconic.
We're not keeping score, but maybe we're keeping score.
The fastest 60 minutes in sports is on the air. It's Danny Havel.
When I wake up every morning, I say to myself, what can I do to make Baby J's life better today?
Justin Grossweiner.
Have I ever told you, Danny, that growing up I really loved ducks?
Danny and Justin starts now on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. Sitting in for Danny today, it's Goose, Steve Mims.
Welcome into day 3 of the Steve and Justin Show here on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny Havel one more time around. We've got wrapping up a 3-game set here with Justin, and we are in here on the fastest 1 hour in sports radio. And today we have a whole bunch of stuff coming from Oregon baseball and softball, as well as Oregon at the Big Ten Media Days. So, Justin, thanks for bringing me back for a third day around.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. I actually haven't been able to check in with you. How's your leg doing?
My leg's good. It's good. It's been, I took 1 week off from playing and came back the next week and had been wrapping it. And now I'm running again, and it feels great. I'm not sprinting to first base anymore.
Okay.
I'm lightly jogging to first base and to other bases. Okay. It's now, if it comes down to being out, if it comes down to being out or ripping a hamstring. So I feel back to 100%. And people keep asking me that on the team. They're like, and again, in senior league softball,
like, why aren't you running harder?
Well, no, every week somebody pulls a hamstring. So now they're all coming to me going, hey, what'd you do? You were back in 2 weeks. That seems pretty quick. What are you doing?
Good.
So they're all... I'm now the poster boy for how to get back from a hamstring injury in 2 weeks, which the key is ice, elevate, rest, maybe rub some CBD oil on it, wrap it, get one of those wraps, and rest it a little bit. And that's what got me back in 2 weeks. So
I'm glad, because I'm starting to feel good now as well.
Yeah.
And I've actually been running on. And so it sounds like you're at the same point with me, which is when you're actually running on and you're like, okay, like this feels good.
And I don't. When I jog, I jog. I'm not a 8-minute mile.
runner.
I'm not a 7-minute mile type guy. I'm a 10-minute mile type guy. So it's not putting a whole lot of pressure on the hamstring when I'm out on like my morning jog. But yeah, in softball, it's sort of like if it's, hey, I might need to pull it up a gear. It's just I'd rather take the out than have to deal with that, because that was painful for, especially like. People don't realize sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night and it's just like throbbing, and it's like, oh, now what do I do? Just sit here in bed and wait for this thing. So I don't want to go through that again. It does. Absolutely. Anytime I get any sort of an injury or anything, if I like sprain a toe or something, and you're like just in pain for like 3 days, you're like, why didn't I ever take for granted just being healthy?
Sure.
Just waking up in the morning, and sure, there's some aches and pains at age 54. I do have some of those, but anytime you have just something that's like a real piercing for like a couple days or something, you realize like, I should have just been happy yesterday when I was feeling good.
Or when you're sick and then you start being like, I wish I was just appreciating this.
Yep, exactly. Got a headache. Yeah, no, I just wish I could wake up and feel good today. So I'm good. I'm back to. We have one more game tomorrow night's the last game of the regular season, and we're 6-3. So hoping to wrap up with a 7-3 season. It's
pretty good. That's like a over 600 winning percentage.
Yes, it's good. It's good. We pulled off a big win last week, so. That was good. How are you? Anything exciting? So I've seen you yesterday.
Yeah, no, I'm nothing since yesterday.
Okay.
I'm going to a wedding in a couple of weeks. I'm excited about that. It's the first wedding of my life that's like someone actually I'm really close to, not just like someone that's around me.
Cool.
So, I'm preparing for that. I got a suit for the first time this last weekend.
Oh, wow.
Not for the first time, but for the first time in a while, I guess I should say. But yeah, no, nothing special, I would say.
Well, I noticed in your most recent promo photo, you've got the tie going. I think you were gone. I joked with Danny that it looked like you might have gotten an internship at an accounting firm in town or something like that. So
yeah, I look pretty good, right?
I don't know if that was the suit and tie, but I'm heading to the fair tonight. The Lane County Fair is going on. I think it kicks off today. And tonight, my daughter and my wife and I are going to see Craig Morgan, country music singer, singing at the fair. So I'm looking forward to that. All right, well, we are going to get into it. Some news, as typically happens, broke yesterday. Anytime we do a show, I feel like within about a half an hour after we get off the air, I'm going to get a text from you saying, hey, look what just happened as soon as we get off the air. And it did again as good news for Oregon fans, as Melyssa Lombardi signed a new deal with U of O taking her through 2030. So I think she had one more year left.
Yeah, she was on the last year.
And this adds 4 to that. So I don't think there was any doubt it would get done. Obviously, she was in a pretty good place of leverage coming off of a trip to the College World Series that they had. And not only bringing back all these freshmen who had started, but adding a really nice portal class. I think Oregon softball right now, you would have to project as a preseason top 4, top 5 team next year. Defending champ Texas will get up there, and we know that Texas Tech paid their pitcher $1 million again, so they'll probably be
among
1-2.
others.
But I think Oregon could be 3, 4, 5 in that. So I don't think any surprise. But I know it's and I know Oregon fans will be happy. And obviously you can't have her going into a last year, a lame duck type year. So you take care of it this year.
No pun intended.
Yeah, there you go. Good one.
But yeah, you can't have her the entire season. Kind of, is she going to come back? Is she not going to come back? It just takes care of it. Now we all know she's going to be there for the next. And
it helps you in recruiting
years.
too. Obviously, that's the big part is recruiting. You can't have it going into that. And so Nails, as I believe she is known on this show, will be back for at least 5 more years with Oregon, which, like I say, is a great deal for her, and got them back to the College World Series. And I think that was a great step this year. Next year, I think anything less than the College World Series would probably be a disappointment.
Probably,
considering that they're bringing. I mean, it seems like.
But that's what they want now, to be one of those programs that gets back there every year, and that's what you want the expectation to be. If you're going to be one of those programs, the expectation should be to get back to the College World Series. Yeah,
and the transfer portal is closed, and as far as we know, the 4 fab freshmen are coming back. Lindsey Grimes coming back as a pitcher. They brought in 2 or 3 all-conference players from outside the conference to come in and join them. So it's a pretty loaded roster, and like I say, she put herself in a good. It's all about leverage these days. When you want to strike when the iron's hot, and props to Nails for doing that. As Melyssa Lombardi gets a new contract, and I think that puts Oregon fans at ease because she's done a nice job. Particularly this group, and last year I thought really brought back that Oregon fan base and turned Jane Sanders Stadium back into kind of a must-see event.
Yeah, I'm excited to see everything through. What is it going to be? Version 13? I think we're going to get to now.
Yeah, what are we at next year? Version 8.
Yeah, version 8.
Version 8 will be next year. And like I say, it looks like it should be another loaded roster. So you and Danny will have to get Nails back on the show here to she's hopefully on a nice summer vacation somewhere.
Well, apparently
relaxing
this is where they
so.
have the meat of their recruiting.
Yeah.
So. And
her son plays at Marist, and she's had some tweets kind of showing off what he's been doing in kind of some prospect baseball camp. So but the good news with those things is they tend to happen in places with good weather. So you can turn a working trip or a kid's recruiting trip into a vacation. But congratulations to Melyssa Lombardi, who, like I say, is now under contract with Oregon through 2030. And kudos to Rob Mullins for getting that done and not sending her under any sort of a lame duck year or putting her in a position to where other schools are going to be coming and looking to see if they can get into her there. Baseball news, some not unexpected, but not exactly disappointing. You can't say it's disappointing when a player signs, but Oregon has now lost 3 players to the Major League Baseball draft. They had 5 drafted this year, and July 28th, so that's next Monday. Next Monday is the signing deadline. Players have to sign by that day there. Yesterday, the top pick for Oregon, Mason Neville, signed with Cincinnati. Got a little bit above slot. The slot value, he was the 114th pick in the 4th round. It was a little lower than people had thought. He had been projected kind of in that 2nd round, but he was able to negotiate that a little bit with an over-slot deal, so he ends up getting $697,500, so almost $700,000. The slot for that was $667,700. So I know that we had been some talk maybe he'd come back because he fell a little bit in the draft, but I think with a guy like that, he's probably felt like ready to go. They come in and throw an overslot deal for him. Maybe it's less than you would have thought in the 2nd round, but not a huge surprise that he decides, hey, it's time to get this pro career started.
Yeah, and I guess when you look at it, it would be, okay, you get a couple of rounds higher, then you're going to make significantly more money, but he also is already coming off of a really good year, and he's going to only be a year older, so it does make sense in a way for him to sit there and say, hey, this is probably the best positioning that I'm going to get. And he really, I thought he'd go higher. I think I saw him on like 50, maybe 50th or something, like maybe 50th or 60th on some of these prospect boards. And certainly as a Cubs fan, I'm not super excited to see him go to the Reds. But I do think that it makes sense if you think of it from the mindset of, hey, he had a good season and he's only going to be a year older, and his stock could maybe only get lower. If he's coming off of a really good year already, then he'd have to replicate that or do even better. And he set the Oregon home run record, obviously. Yeah. So it's not going to be easy to have a better season. So it does make sense in a way for him to go and try to make it in the minor leagues, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a risk either way, like you say. I mean, I look at it as, you're 21 years old and you're offered $700,000. That would be a tough one to turn down. I mean, just in terms of life, that is life-changing money. You can take that money, start investing it, start doing some things with it, and set yourself up really well. You could go back in the draft, and we've seen players who, go back in the draft and end up making twice as much if they become a first-rounder. But there's also been stories of folks who go back and, look at it was Caraway this year for Oregon State, was projected, coming into the year as a first-rounder and really struggled this year and ended up getting drafted later, ended up transferring instead to LSU. So, and again.
Did Trent Caraway get drafted?
I thought he did, but either way, he went to LSU. I mean, I'm sure that there was a call for him where he could have taken a draft, but they didn't offer him the money that he was thinking originally.
And probably what happened is they said, hey, what's it going to take for you to get out of LSU? Yeah. And probably he was like, I'm going to LSU.
Yeah. Which might be the other surprise for Neville that you would have thought, $600,000 these days from what we're hearing about some of those SEC schools, you'd have thought maybe one of them would have offered him, hey, we'll match whatever they're going to give you just to come down here and play a year.
Right.
But again, I kudos to him. He ended up setting, you said, the school record with 26 home runs. Also set the program's single-season record with 53 walks, 724 slugging, and 67 runs scored. So that is a heck of a year. Led the nation in home runs by the time it was over with 26, which if you were an Oregon baseball fan 10 years ago and I told you that Oregon had the nation's home run leader, you would have laughed in my face. Oregon had, the fences were a little further out. They kind of were recruiting more for pitching and some small ball offense. Their program leader in home runs was 10, 11, 12 for a while there. So 26 really shows kind of what Coach Wazakowski has kind of built this thing more into the offense. And Jacob Walsh, who was drafted in the 15th round, I think, by Washington. I can't see anywhere where he is signed yet.
Very nice.
I think he's out of eligibility, though, so he will sign. Unfortunately for him, those guys don't tend to get a lot because they don't have the leverage. Obviously, Neville had the leverage of, hey, I can go back to college if you don't pay me. Anson Arose was in the 19th round with the Dodgers. It does not appear to me that he is signed yet, which would be good news. He was a really valuable guy for Oregon who would be a good one to get back. I believe he has a year of eligibility left if he would like, and after being drafted by the Dodgers. But then there was also today, so just actually 2 hours ago, Jackson Reitz. Is it Reitz? I think it's Reitz. Reitz. Jackson Reitz, who was another fourth rounder, he signed with the Twins for $635,700. So, again, fourth round pitcher. He was the 6'11" pitcher that Oregon brought in this year. 93-mile-an-hour fastball, 6'11". So he has signed with the Twins, so he will not be coming back with Oregon. And he got it for $635,000. And then, so that was one of Oregon's starters and Oregon's ace all year long. And I believe the Big Ten pitcher of the year was Grayson Grinzel. And earlier this week, Grayson signed with Detroit for $297,500, which was actually an underslot deal. Yeah. The slot for that was actually $333, so it came in about 36 under. But again, Grayson might have been a guy who thought too. There was some knock on him that it was more kind of not exactly, we talked about yesterday with Rich Hill, but not exactly a guy who's coming in with a 100-mile fastball, but a guy who, so maybe doesn't light up the radar screens.
A guy that knows how to pitch.
A guy who knows how to pitch and was great for Oregon this year. But again, a guy who probably looks and says, hey, I'll take this now. I'll get in there and start working my way up where the big money's at. So Oregon has lost Grinzel and Reitz, two of their starters this year, and we're still waiting to hear on Walsh and Arose, and those guys we will find out by Monday. Oregon State, there was an interesting one, and we talked about it. Cannon Reeder. So Cannon, I got to know a little bit. He played for the Drifters a couple summers ago. He's a Summit High kid, Summit High outfielder, played for the Drifters. And back on June 23rd, so this is exactly a month ago today, like right after the draft, Ryan Harlan, who's been on the show before, from Beaver Blitz, I believe, Ryan Harlan, he announced, hey, Cannon Reeder is returning to the Beavers next season. Looked like Cannon had put something on his Instagram that said Beaver Nation Forever. So everybody thought he was coming back. All of a sudden today, both Ryan Harlan and Jake Hedberg, another guy who's been on the show before, covered the Beavers, both have confirmed that he did end up signing with the Pirates. So that's an interesting one. Cool local story because that's a kid from Summit High School. Summit actually had another guy drafted this year in like the second round. So Summit's really putting out some ballers. But so he signed. So that's an unexpected loss for the Beavers to there. And the way that works, it's not a huge surprise because He comes out right after the draft. They probably make him an offer. I think he was a 14th round pick. So they probably make him an offer somewhere around slot, which isn't a lot. And he says, hey, I'm going to go back to college. I'm going to play it. Well, after a month, maybe a couple of guys that they thought they were going to get deals with done. So now they've got more money in their draft pool. They can come back to somebody who's not signing like Reeder and say, hey, turns out we got more money available than we thought. We know you said you were going back to college, but if we add in an extra $100,000, an extra $150,000, and then all of a sudden you can kind of work it that way.
Well, how long do you have from when you're drafted to sign?
Till the 28th. So the draft, I think, was on June, it was July. Was the draft? I think it's about 3 weeks because I think the draft was that All-Star weekend. It was that Sunday of the All-Star weekend.
Yeah, because
so
right when I was traveling.
So the draft was the 6th, and then the 28th is the signing deadline. So you have 3 days or 3 weeks to go ahead and sign.
Okay.
So again, he put that thing on there before the draft saying he was coming back. So everybody said, hey, he's coming back. But then when he gets drafted, and now, like I say, so you see some deals where, guys will just kind of take it right up to the deadline and say, nope, I'm not signing unless we get to this number. And then once teams, deadlines make deals. So Cannon Reeder will not be going back to Oregon State, which is too bad for the Beavs.
Yeah,
they've had quite a few.
They have, and he would have been a big part of their team next year, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of next year, I got an email today from Baseball America that did their preseason way too early top 25 for next year, and the number 1 team in the country is from the Big Ten. Do you have a guess who that would be?
Is it USC?
UCLA. Correct. UCLA.
I meant UCLA.
UCLA, which tied with Oregon for the Big Ten title this year. Oregon got it based on the tiebreaker.
It makes way more sense.
And they were in the College World Series this year, but they have, I think it's Rock Chalowski, which is a great name. He was their shortstop who's projected to be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. But anyway, so he was an All-American. They have a couple All-Americans. According to Baseball America, no team in the country brings back more proven firepower than UCLA. So that'll be a good deal because we had talked this year about the Big Ten was really down in baseball, and Oregon was kind of the only ranked team. Now, next year, at least you're going to know with going in that there will be another team. Now, whether they play them in this 18-team, super conference, but it should bring a little bit more attention to the Big Ten. So I think that's good for Oregon. For those interested, LSU, where Trent Caraway went, was number 2, Texas number 3, Mississippi State number 4. Those were the top 4. Oregon State came in on the Baseball America top 25 this morning, the way too early one. Oregon State is number 17, which is interesting because they talk about how they really lost. Most of their offense is gone, but they bring back Dax Whitney, who was the ace, who was playing their Sunday guy, but it was really kind of an ace, projected a top draft pick next year, and then Ethan Kleinschmidt, the in-state guy. So they've got kind of basically they're projecting maybe the best 1-2 on the mound for a 3-game series, but they're going to really have to rebuild the offense. So they have Oregon State at number 17. They do not have Oregon in the top 25. Again, they're probably waiting to see. I know Oregon's brought in quite a few portal guys, some highly rated there. The recruiting class, I know they lost their top guy, was a catcher who was drafted by the Rays. I don't know for sure that he is signed yet. But so it looks like they're looking more for Oregon to be in a rebuilding deal. But we'll see. By the time it gets to next season, depending on depending on who signs between the draft classes and the players, Oregon could be back up in that top 25. And quite honestly, if you ask Mark Wasikowski, he probably wouldn't mind if you left him out of a preseason poll anyway, because he
doesn't care about
probably rather be there than number 1 where UCLA is going to be.
Yeah, right. And they still have Dominic Hellman's coming back.
Yep.
So Mayo,
yep,
as Danny lovingly calls him. So they still have some power, and
Maddox Maloney will be
Maloney,
the top shortstop, argue, in the country, and his brother Connor Maloney, who's just graduated from Thurston, will be there as well.
They're going to also, they brought in that pitcher from San Diego.
Yep, who came with the new pitching coach.
Correct. So I don't know. I think with college baseball, like if you're outside of the top 25, like I don't want to say who cares, but like who cares?
I just think they need to, and I was harping on this all year. You and Danny heard me that I just think they need to make sure they schedule a little tougher in non-conference this year because that Big Ten is just not going to help them.
Do we have the schedule yet, or is it going to be released?
No, I don't think so. I think they're still working on it. I would be willing to bet you that they'll be playing in a big preseason tournament in Arizona or Texas or something like that to make sure.
What you said, I think, last year was that they might have been saving some of the money.
I think they wanted to see kind of what the Big Ten budget looked like, what the travel looked like, how it would be money-wise, and then they could do a better job budgeting the next year. So I think that was part. And, hey, I mean, it wasn't a great schedule, but it didn't hurt them. They ended up getting a regional at home and just couldn't get through it.
I know.
So,
yeah, that was That was tough.
Otherwise, would have been able to host that one there. So, so comings and goings there. And speaking of baseball, the Royals beat the Cubs today.
Did.
So that's a win.
We didn't get a chance to do some sort of bet.
We didn't. I didn't realize the game was in the day game.
I didn't realize
if
either.
I thought that, because I was thinking about
game.
that, but then I was like, no, because it'll be Wednesday night, and then we'll have to do it next time I'm on. But congratulations to my Kansas City Royals as they 8-4 they beat the Cubs, so they take 2 out of 3 in the series. But in the big picture, you have a much better chance of making the playoffs and winning. So in the big picture, you win.
Well,
but on the smaller frame, it's a good day for the
you also knock us
Kansas
down
City Royals.
to the first wild card now instead of being the number one in the NL.
That's true. All right, when we come back, we've got some audio from Las Vegas where Dan Lanning was on the podium today. I'm not going to say he had earth-breaking news that he gave us, but we'll get a chance to hear Dan Lanning from Big Ten Media Day. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny. You're listening to the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports Eugene and Newport. Welcome back into the Danny and Justin Show on a Wednesday, the final day that I will be filling in here for Danny. We are actually Havel-less today. We had Abby in here the last couple days running the board, but today both her and her father are gone, so Woody's in Vegas. We could kind of take this thing up the rails if we wanted to, Justin.
Yeah, we're the Havel's not.
With the Havel's not. There you go. Wow, good one. I didn't even set you up with that one. You had that one ready to roll. Good job. Danny will be back tomorrow. You guys will be out at Laurelwood, the weekly Laurelwood show. I'm guessing that Nick's going to come on and tell you what's going on out there. Jacob might give a lesson. Heck, the General, I guarantee you the General will be out there. Jeff Oliver, Scott Sims may stop by again. All my friends. It's like my worlds collide. My longtime friends,
That's
Jeff
great.
and Scott, are suddenly now popular guests on the radio show I sometimes fill in and help out on. So anyway, I can't make it out there tomorrow. I'd like to come out there one time and just be in the audience and boo and hiss.
Of course.
But just because of the view, it's so beautiful out there. It's a great place to be at 2 o'clock on a Thursday.
To boo and hiss.
But you guys will be back. Danny will be back, and you guys will be at Laurelwood tomorrow doing that show and then wrapping up the week on Friday. So Big Ten Media Day. We joked that yesterday that we don't have guests yesterday and today because pretty much all the people that we want to have on are at Big Ten either at Big Ten Media Day or on vacation because they're preparing for the college football practices to start next week. So in this segment that we normally have a guest, we're not going to have a real guest, but we are going to hear from Dan Lanning. Today was Oregon's day at Big Ten Media Day, again down at Mandalay Bay in Vegas. You can follow Tyson Alger, Eric Scopel, James Crepia, 3 friends of the program and of the station, to get more information if you want to find out what was said out there. Typical for a media day, the coaches don't say a whole lot. They spend most of their time kind of thanking their staff and promoting the 3 players they brought with them. And I saw where I think PJ Fleck basically filibustered. There's like a 15-minute
Really?
Where you like give an opening statement and answer some questions, and basically he spoke for 15 minutes, and they said, "All right, PJ, you're on to the next." So,
I noticed that it was a lot of just. You're expecting Dan to get asked a question or for him to kind of be like, I'll open it for questions. And it's about 8 minutes or 9 minutes of him thanking everybody. And like you said, talking about the 3 players that they brought, Bryce Betcher and Mateo. And also, of course, Kenyon Sadiq. And he was asked questions that you knew he wouldn't answer. And he had some comments that were pretty short, but some ones that were pretty interesting as well, I think.
Yeah.
Some ones that were more written down. More than spoken.
And those are bad TV events because, like I say, the 15-minute, every coach gets up, thanks his athletic director, thanks his staff, talks about how hard they worked in the offseason, thanks the Big Ten commissioner, talks about his 3 players, and it's 8 minutes in. What those are really about for media on the ground is you get a lot of one-on-one interviews. You can kind of go have lunch with the coaches and this and that. So it's sort of one of those things if you watch on TV, it's like, this is just a waste. They're not getting anything. But those guys are all the point of the media day is those guys and those players are kind of hanging around and set up for one-on-one interviews. But we did get a couple things interesting from Dan Lanning today.
Yes, we did. Okay, so let's start off with the theme. So
I thought this was interesting.
That's actually maybe the most interesting thing.
This might have been the news he broke for today.
Right, so let's hear about the theme of the 2025 football season.
Okay.
But since we're in Vegas, it seems like the right time to say it. As our theme for this team is double down. Right, we have done an unbelievable job of building this team over time. You look at our success season to season, and as this team has grown, the process works. We're close, and we've been able to accomplish a lot. So that's really what's going to feed our program this offseason, and will feed us into fall camp, is believing in the process that we have. We got great buy-in from our players. It is a cast of new characters. You're going to see new people on the field, which is exciting. I'm very excited about this team. Going into the offseason, we felt like we had to take an opportunity to really develop leadership. We did that through a leadership retreat. We've done that through focusing on our DNA traits that have always been a big piece of our program, and continue to see our team grow in that area, whether it's connection, whether it's growth. When you see our team play, you're going to see a team that plays with toughness. I know a year ago we got asked the question, are we tough enough to be in the Big Ten? And I think that we were able to answer those questions on the field last year.
It's interesting. It sounds good. Double down. If I were there with him, my focus, I just don't know what that means exactly. I mean, like I say, I'm sure he's got an idea of it, and I'm sure the team knows. But just on the outside, he didn't really get into. Does he mean like, hey, we won the conference last year, we're going to double down, we're going to go try to, we've kind of, this is our house money here.
That's another meaning that I actually didn't think about.
This is our house money here, and we just drew. I'm not a great poker player or a great blackjack player, but we just got. A jack on there, and we think we can do this again, so we're doubling down? Is that what it means?
I think it means, and kind of what he was explaining, that the things that they're doing are working, and so they're going to double down on our process, basically. And so we
don't let the final result from last year impact that. Okay.
Exactly. We're close. We know that we're building things the right way. They've had success in the portal. They've had success recruiting. And so I think the doubling down is we're not going to change our process. Doubling down on our process.
Okay, that makes sense. And that might be what it was. And sometimes when you're speaking, you give that but I was curious if he meant that or if he meant like, again, hey,
he threw in some good meanings there, actually.
Yeah,
though.
Or if he's all in. And then you bust because Ohio State beat you.
Right.
But then, so play again. And,
You're thinking about all these poker analogies now.
Well, I think it has to be. But this is more of somebody in Dan Lanning's salary structure. Maybe he's saying, I put $50,000 on a blackjack hand and we lost. Now I'm doubling down. I'm still confident in what the reasoning I did it, and I'm putting that $50,000 back down. So I think that's maybe what it means. Like you said, that hey, we believe in what we did. It didn't get the final result that we were looking for, but we think that if we do the same thing again, it can get us to the same thing. We don't have to make drastic reductions.
Right. It's process. It's all about the process.
I think we just talked out and figured out what doubling down was. So.
And I feel like last year, we couldn't even remember what the actual theme was.
I felt like last year it was like every game
every week it'd be a different theme. But I think there was an overall theme that we just are forgetting now.
Yeah, there may have been.
Isn't a great look for us.
No.
I do think that it's more. The themes are actually more important each week.
Yeah.
Right. Because then you had Gladiator. And
exactly. And a lot of times those themes, came through in the post game. It's like we didn't hear what the theme was until they won.
Afterwards.
It's like we're not gonna tell you the theme because if we lose, it doesn't look great.
We would just see like some sort of thing. We saw Bryce Betcher with a bat.
Yeah, exactly. So double down. I'm sure that'll be on a T-shirt. I guarantee you somebody right now is printing up a T-shirt of Dan Lanning at a blackjack table throwing some money down, and it says "Double Down Dan." I guarantee if that T-shirt hasn't been made yet, it's being made now. So like I say, the theme that is interesting. He talked about some other topics as well.
So of course talked about the QB room a little bit, and he was asked about, hey, what's the connection like between Kenyon Sadiq and Dante Moore? Of course, he's not going to answer directly about that connection because that would indicate maybe that he's a starting quarterback. But he did talk about the quarterback room.
We've been really fortunate the last few years, and I've said this to a few, that we've had a great mentor in that room. We've had guys that have had unbelievable experience, right, that these guys were able to watch and see. And I think probably what impresses me most with Dante is not wanting to be in a microwave society, not wanting to just get it fast because there's an opportunity in front of him, but to have the slow-cooked meal, right, to have the opportunity to sit back and mature and learn from experiences that you don't necessarily have to be on the field to feel. And that same goes for Austin, that same goes for Luke and the other guys in our program. Like, those guys have learned from great quarterbacks that have done it at a really, really high level. For him to have that opportunity, show maturity, develop in his leadership, I think it's going to create great opportunities for our team.
And kind of in conjunction with this one, he was asked about the direct connection between Kenyon Sadiq and Dante Moore. And he kind of brought in this interesting video game angle that I want us to talk about.
Okay.
Yesterday was the first time I played it, but I played with my youngest son, Titan. We played the NCAA college football, and Sadiq went off, right? He balled out. So I need to make sure I bring that up to our quarterbacks, throw it to Kenyon, because He's been unbelievable this offseason. Like I said, if you just see him work, it's not a secret. I feel like he would tell you those are some of the traits that he learned from the guys that were ahead of him, whether that's Terrence Ferguson or Pat Herbert. But yeah, there is a chemistry being developed, and that's part of what fall camp's about, right? Our quarterbacks getting on the same page, as our tight ends, as our wideouts, as our backs, and just, creating that rhythm. Our guys have worked really hard this summer, but Kenyon's going to be hard for people to deal with. He's a special player. I think he can be the best tight end in the nation.
So I think there's a couple different angles here because, of course, he's being asked about the direct connection between Dante Moore and Kenyon Sadiq, and he kind of goes on this side angle here, which I think is kind of great. But that being said, I think it also goes to show what he thinks about Kenyon Sadiq, and I can only just imagine. I'm just imagining Dan Lanning actually sitting here and playing NCAA 26. Have you ever actually played any of these games before?
I haven't played. I'm not a video game guy.
That's fine, and I am a video game guy. So what I'll tell you is that if you're sitting there and playing these games, like if you're Dan Lanning, do you get ideas of like, hey, I'm having success with this one play, and Kenyon's in these different spots? Like, of course, I think that everybody knows that Kenyon's supposed to be the guy, especially with the Evan Stewart injury. He's going to be the guy that most likely is going to be the leading receiver on this team. I would say that maybe DeCorian Moore, I think, has a shot. There's other guys, Malik Benson, I think, has a shot too. But I would say, I think Kenyon Sadiq, maybe that's my hot take. I think he's going to be the leading receiver for this team.
Well, I mean, the hype is high, and we heard it last year. I think in the spring, wasn't it the spring when Will Stein said he's kind of reminds him of Brock Bowers? And now Dan Lanning just said he might be the best tight end in the nation. So the hype is there for this. And so it'll be interesting to see if he lives up to it now, because it's a different kind of tight end. It's this isn't your Brock Bowers, your Rob Gronkowski type who's blocking off the line. This is a guy who is more of just kind of this freak athlete type that you can put out there. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they've said enough to make me think that they really like what he's going to bring to them there with him. But like I say, when you compare it to Bowers by your coordinator and your coach says you might be the best tight end in the country, tells me that they expect a lot. Yeah, I mean, does this become the greatest tight end season in Oregon? I mean, I don't know that didn't Ferguson set the single season record with like in the 50s of catches? I mean, is this a 70 catch for 900-yard type guy?
I think it could be. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think that the 70 catches seems like a lot to me, I have to say. But I think it may be more. I'm not even necessarily thinking, hey, he's going to get 1,000 yards. I just think that he's going to end up as the top guy because he has more experience. I'm also thinking about the fact that in the Big Ten championship game, he was obviously featured. The offense didn't really have any success in the game against Ohio State. And then also, even little things like going to the pro day, and none of the other guys that were on the current team that weren't going to be drafted were there except for Kenyon Sadiq. Yeah. Kenyon Sadiq was catching passes from Dylan Gabriel, and it's kind of like, all right, like this guy is clearly trusted in this program. They clearly value him a lot as a person and the way that he works. I mean, we've talked to him a little bit before, and he seems like a really, really nice guy. And so I just think that he's sort of very clearly the guy that's going to be meant to blossom on this team. But we'll see. I mean, obviously there's have to be some sort of connection with the quarterbacks, like it's being mentioned, and we'll see what they actually want to do, because they're not going to just be able to throw. I don't think they're just be able to throw to him like every time.
Yep. A couple of things from that Dan Lanning, from the two clips here. First off, sometimes Dan Lanning says the greatest metaphors ever, and I don't know if he intends to. I don't know if he thinks these things up or if they just roll off his tongue. But for him to describe Dante Moore as in a microwave society, this is a guy who wanted a slow-cooked meal by waiting out a year. That is an unbelievable line. Again, I don't know if that's just flying off the tongue and but he has metaphors. Sound like it's like the grass is green. I mean, he has metaphors sometimes. But yeah, he said in a microwave society, he's taking time for the slow-cooked meal, which is a great line in saying, hey, most quarterbacks transferring are going somewhere to play right away. He knew coming in he was waiting out a year and took that when most didn't.
I would almost say they're so good that I don't want to not give him credit, but I almost want to say there's somebody on that staff or somewhere up there that's just writing down some of these lines. It's like, drop this in the next one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But no, I think it might be him. He's got some good ones.
And also interesting to mention, because in Dan's 3 years at Oregon, he had Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel. When Nix came in that first year, it wasn't known he'd be the starter, but he was 22, 23 years old. By that second year, he was 23, 24 years old. Gabriel last year was 23, 24. So he talks about mentors. There has always been a mentor. Mm-hmm. Last year, Dante Moore and Luke Mogo, he talked about, had a mentor in Dylan Gabriel. Austin Novosad's had a mentor in Gabriel and Bo Nix because he's been around. So there's an interesting point that every year these guys have been, none of these guys in our quarterback room have been the starter and have played, but they've always had a really respected guy above them that they could learn from. And I think it's interesting that now they don't have that. Now it is, Dante Moore is a third-year junior. I think it's the same year as Novosad. Novosad might be a fourth year, but you've got...
Is he not a redshirt?
He might be, yeah. Well, Dante's... Yeah, but he's a third year because he played and then redshirt,
right.
So this is a third year.
Okay.
But so it is interesting that he talks about he's always had kind of this older veteran guy that the others, and now it's kind of on these guys to do it, and it'll be interesting to see how that one turns out.
Yeah, no, I agree, and especially because one of them is going to have to start, right? And there isn't going to be the guy in the room that's sort of... I mean, what would you want, right? A backup to be that sort of mentor, right? So you can't really have that at this point. It's sort of all been... That's the thing. It sort of felt like the last couple of years, we've known that this was a plan. It was all going to come down to Austin Novosad and Dante Moore, and this is going to be their time to shine. And obviously there's some recruits that are younger than some of their freshmen. Mm-hmm. And so in the future, those guys will potentially have these guys as their mentors. So I guess it's sort of the first leap of faith that they've had at quarterback in a little bit. Because before, I mean, going back to Bo, obviously, like you said, coming from the SEC, it wasn't like we think about him now. There was a totally different perception about Bo.
It was
a
leap of faith. And I remember when he first committed to Oregon, it was like, oh, come on, they're bringing in Bo Nix.
Everybody wanted Ty Thompson.
Exactly.
And Ty Thompson couldn't even start at Tulane.
Yeah, but right away you knew Nix, and so these guys have been able to learn. So I guess that's the interesting part is in there. There was always kind of a pecking order that it's Bo and it's Dylan, and they're great leaders, and they're going to lead these guys. Now, whoever it is has to be that leader without having done that before.
But they're not bringing somebody in this time. It's kind of just from within now.
Yeah, it's guys who've been in it for a while. Yeah.
Right.
Was there another, Dan?
Yeah, we got a few more here. So this is a good one. He was asked about tampering.
I did like this.
All right, so here's Dan Lanning on tampering.
Play the game the way it's supposed to be played, right? But there has to be consequences to actions, and if there aren't consequences, then there's going to continue to be issues like that.
I think that's great. When he originally was asked about it, he said, yeah. And then the guy was like, could you elaborate a little bit? I think that's an interesting line, too, in a lot of ways. Yes, because tampering, until some school comes out and says, hey, School B came and recruited our guy, we're going to report it to the NC2A. Basically, it's just everybody spreads rumors without putting their name on it. But it's also similar that we've heard, kind of in the new NIL world, where will some schools, that there's supposedly this cap of $20 million, will some go over it? Will some still find ways to have boosters given under the table things? And I listened to somebody, because they've got this new College Sports Commission, another fancy new name that's supposed to enforce these NIL rules and collectives. And I heard some coach was on, it was really smart, who said, hey, when the first violation happens, if somebody comes down and gets a bowl ban, if a coach gets a $500,000 fine, if the school gets fined, if it's something really serious, it'll put a stop to it. If they come in and give a warning or a probation type thing like they've done in the past, it's not going to stop it at all. So I think Lanning's point there is good. That at some point during the wild, wild west we call the college football, there has to be some consequences. If a team's, and we haven't really seen consequences for a team since USC with Reggie Bush number of years ago. Michigan violated rules, but still was able to win a national title during that year with their coach just sitting out a couple games. Their coach sitting out a couple games this year. Who cares? But I think it is viable in both the NIL world and in tampering and all these things, that until the NC2A comes down and brings a hammer on some school and says, hey, these people were cheating and we're going to suspend the coach, fire the coach, whatever it's going to be, you're going to see it go on. And I think that's Dan's point is, hey, everybody's whispering under the table. Nobody's really, everybody's pointing fingers without putting their name behind it. Until somebody puts their name behind it and somebody gets punished, it's going to keep going on.
Do you think this could be one of the many factors that I think could be leading to the inevitable super conference of the SEC and the Big Ten, and then you throw in Notre Dame, and then you have somebody that actually is a commissioner and actually is from the top down saying that these are the rules and they're going to be enforced? Because right now, you're right, there isn't that.
Well, you could be, but right now you have a Big Ten where I'm sure that there are Big Ten teams who, Oregon took players from Purdue. There's all sorts of, inter-conference transfers. I'm sure that there's somebody in there, not saying the Oregon one, but just I'm sure some school in the Big Ten feels like some other school in the Big Ten took their guy, but they're not going to the commissioner and reporting it, because then it's like this bad faith, and that it's sort of the feeling that the honor among thieves type thing. Hey, we're all kind of breaking rules. If I come out and claim that you're tampering with this guy, well, this school over here is going to recall that I was tampering with their guy, so I'm not going to blame you. And I think that's Lanning's thing is, hey, at some point, if nobody wants to come out and talk about it, there's not going to be any consequences because there's no punishments.
Right, and I know that these coaches as well, there's all these like sort of unspoken agreements of, hey, we don't recruit the best guy out of this state. And then I remember hearing a story about Urban Meyer talking about recruiting one of Brett Bielema's guys, and Brett Bielema got mad at him, and Urban Meyer said, I don't care, I'm just going to continue to recruit who I want to recruit. Yep. And so I think that those kind of conventions are kind of what's leading to the way that things are going down now. And I think that the tampering, it's sort of the same.
Will be the next one on there. We better head to a break. We're running long on that one there. So when we come back, Dan Lanning, the most interesting thing he said today wasn't in a public setting. It was with an ESPN reporter, and the story's up on ESPN, and we'll get into that. It delves a little bit looking back on the playoffs last year and how Dan would like to see the college football playoff changed in the future. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny. You're listening to the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports, Eugene and Newport. Welcome back into the Danny and Justin Show. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny. Danny will be back tomorrow, and the boys will be up at Laurelwood, so tune in from 2 to 3. And if you have a long lunch available, you should go up to the pub and have lunch and watch these two incredible radio personalities in person, live and in person, out on the deck. We'll be up there tomorrow. So we were talking about Dan Lanning, and you heard some of the clips from his main stage press conference today.
It was a performance. He performed for about 8 or 9 minutes.
The one other note I had written down, and I have to say, I love a football coach who names his kids Titan and Niles, and then he's got a Caden, which my son's name's Caden too. But when he talked about him and Titan were playing that game, I thought it's kind of like when Mario was here. He had like a Rocco and a somebody else or something like that. But anyway, I love the name of Dan Lanning's children. So Lanning actually, like I mentioned, there's a lot of one-on-one interviews that go on, which is where most of the access and the interesting stories come by. Adam Rittenberg, who is on ESPN, got Dan and asked him about the college football playoff, and I thought this was really interesting. Lanning basically said he would like an NFL model to where you start on week 0. You know, right now that first week, not many teams play on that August 23rd. He wants to start on the 23rd, maybe just have one bye. So now you're playing your regular season up until about Thanksgiving. And then you just go right to the playoffs, kind of like the NFL. He said, or
that
actually,
sounds very similar to a different league that I was thinking about.
Yeah, and that's what he said. So he said basically, if you did that, you could finish your season on Thanksgiving. The next week would be championship week, which would be the first weekend in December. But then if you have that second weekend in December as the first round of the playoffs, you could play this thing and wrap it up on January 1st, which is what Dan Lanning wants. Now, unfortunately, Dan Lanning wrapped up last year's season on January 1st, but not in the way he wanted. But as he points out, and he didn't make any, and I will say, he didn't make any excuse of it. He says, when they asked him about it, he says, we lost, it is what it is, right? But we were a healthy team. It was a month, that's a long time. And as we've all talked about, it turns out the bye wasn't the advantage it was supposed to be because of the amount of time they took off. But what Lanning says, he says, I'm in favor of creating our playoff system to mirror every other playoff system in sports. The season's over and the playoffs start shortly after. The long break is something I'm not crazy about. I wish we just played every single Saturday in college football. I wish it ended on January 1st. I love it. Because we would now the problem you're going to have is that every week thing you're going to run into, you try to avoid going up against the NFL. So a lot of what college football does is they've tried to do some Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but and sometimes the NFL by the time you're doing some Saturdays. But I think you could do the Friday, Saturday. But I think if you played, you finished the regular season, we find out that, and then you do the Big Ten and all the conference tournament or playoffs the next week, then that Sunday, Selection Sunday, and it's like the NCAA basketball tournament. Selection Sunday, and they're playing on Thursday. Now you turn around and you go play. It's the same schedule you've always been on. I love the idea from Dan Lanning.
I love it, as well. First of all, Adam Rittenberg, he's a great writer. Yes. We've had him on the show as well.
Okay, well, he'd be a good guest to get back on to talk about that.
Yeah, we'll have to do that sometime soon. And I think that if we have a league like the NFL that's sort of done it a certain way, and I actually think that the NFL is kind of lengthening their schedule a little bit too much with the additional games. But we have seen the way that they've done it for a long time. And so why not use the success that the NFL has had and the interest that the NFL has brought in the week-to-week thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think another thing that was interesting that Dan Lanning said, and I think we kind of knew this, which was that it was a healthy team coming in. Yeah. So it wasn't like you got this advantage from the layoff. Yeah. So it wasn't like you had this advantage of, well, we're super beat up at the end of the season, and then we got a month basically to rest up. Like they were kind of ready to go for that next week, and they would have been, except for they had that time off, and then we all saw what happened. So I do think that there's going to be some times where there's going to be teams that are speed up at the end of the season, and they could use that time off, and so it could be a different advantage. But I think that at the same time, I would much rather see it, like he said, starting everybody plays week 0, because why not, right?
Yeah.
Why not?
It's August 23rd. It just means you'd be starting practice this week instead of next week.
Exactly.
We're ready
you
for
have
college
a
football.
1 week shorter summer.
And you're not going up against, that's one more week you're not going against the NFL.
Plenty of people are ready for it right now.
Yeah.
If people started playing, if they started playing the games next week, people would be ready.
Yeah, it gives you another week where you're not going up against the NFL. And he talks about, we've talked to him plenty of times about how screwed up the college football calendar is, the fact that the portal's open in the middle of the playoff. But part of what Lanning says is, he says January is supposed to be your month that you're able to go on the road and recruit. Last year's national championship game was January 20th, so when do you go on the road to recruit? I think some of the things, there's just some things where I don't think the season aligns with the calendar. Again, there's a whole lot of calendar issues, but I do think his point's right that, hey, if we could wrap this thing up by January 1, because even at that point, you could open the portal then, and you still could do it for 2 weeks before kind of classes start at most places. So right now, they open the portal early.
Right, and
because
people
you
are
can't wait
opting out
until
of the playoff because of it.
So this would cut it down on that as well, and then you could just have that portal open for a week, and if people transfer, they could get to their new place in time to start classes for winter term.
Well, that's the sort of problem with it all, right, is that it's all in conjunction with the school schedule.
Yeah.
And that's why I guess you can't run it directly like a NFL-type schedule.
Yeah,
but
some are on semesters, some are on quarters type thing like
trimesters, whatever it is.
But they're all having a Christmas break that they can come out of.
Right.
So he talks about, so again, I love the idea of if they start, because right now, August 30th is Oregon's opening. That's the widespread opener. But there are games on the 23rd.
I think there's like 5.
Yeah, and it would be great to have like a really good game on that day. The best game is your Farmageddon, your Iowa State versus Kansas State.
Is there not a game in Ireland?
That's the game in Ireland.
Oh, okay.
Farmageddon is in Dublin this year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But it would be great to have, because you're getting excited for college football. It's like, all right, well, we're going to have some games this week, and then you turn on and it's like Stanford, Hawaii, and Nevada,
it's all
Charlotte,
the people that
something.
are like the sickos that want to basically watch any sort of college football.
But I'd say the rest of the world, we're ready for college football on August 23rd. So I love his idea. Hey, everybody plays 0 week. It basically just means you're starting practice this week instead of next week. So I'm sure most of these teams are ready to go now anyway. You get to the 23rd, you're playing. Like I say, you can still have probably 1 or 2 buys. Finish it up on that Thanksgiving weekend. Conference tournament. I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad that Dan's speaking about it and doing it in a way where he's not saying, hey, we need to change this because it screwed us last year. He's saying, hey, we lost. That was on us. But I'm just telling you, having gone through it, I'm telling you this would be better for everybody is the way he's putting it.
Right. And he has, you brought it up earlier, that their season ended on January 1st. So he's talking about, hey, recruiting in January is usually a time that we do that, and if you're playing on January 20th, so how many teams are playing at January 20th?
Yeah.
I think it's only a couple teams probably, but still, I still think the point is really good because, even if you do end your season January 1st, you're prepping for a potential run, and all of a sudden your plans are totally changed. So I don't think it's this sort of easy, and now we're going to go recruit for a month.
Well, and even, Oregon lost on the 1st, so Ohio State's semifinal game, I think, was January 10th. So instead of this 7, now you're at 9, then it's 10 days to the 20th. I would agree, it probably throws off I'm not a Division I athlete, but it probably throws off your calendar a little bit and your body clock because you're used to going every 7 days, and now, hey, we got 30 days, and now we're waiting 9. Just get it to where, like I say, I know a part of the pushback from others would be, hey, you got to schedule these things that, not going up against the NFL, but I think if you had your matchups on a Saturday, and even if there was a random NFL game, if you had good enough games and you were kind of coming in right after the season when people were still excited about it and the teams weren't having a bunch of opt-outs, I think it works.
Player safety-wise, any concerns about not having 2 buys?
No, I don't know that. Again, I'm not a player on there. You might even be, I think you'd still have a bye, and by starting that week early, you might still have 2. I don't know exactly how it would work, but the bigger player safety, you might say if, hey, you played your, basically 12 games, and then suddenly you had a conference tournament, or a conference championship game, and then you went right into the playoff. Maybe you're playing 16 out of 18 weeks, but the next time that player safety involves is what the NCAA is worried about. Let me know, because as far as I've been told, TV is a little bit bigger problem for them than that. All right, that's going to wrap it for us. Justin, thanks for having me on the last couple days. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always fun to do it whenever Danny's out and about. If you're listening out there, Danny, on your way back, have a safe trip back from Indianapolis. I will give the microphone back to you tomorrow when you guys will be up at Laurelwood.
We'll look forward to having you back soon.
I will look forward to coming on whenever needed, and we kind of got through the dead part. It's football season now, so there's a lot to talk about. And even without guests, we got it done. So I appreciate all the conversations the last couple days. This is Steve Mims filling in for Danny. You're listening to the Danny and Justin Show on Fox Sports